Yeah, so look, Chair, my amendment number 6 has been ruled out of order, as has Amendment 8 and Amendment 9. I want to speak to the principle of the 3 amendments here at Section 21 because I don't want to be coming back in again and delay the meeting. Look, Minister, this is an issue that I feel very passionately about, and that is that we have a substantial number of vacant properties around the country where older persons have gone into long-term nursing home care. I estimate there's about 4,500 homes being left empty every single year because people have gone into long-term nursing home care. About 400 of those homes are being rented out. So we're talking about just over 4,000 homes a year that are being left vacant. And once they become vacant, by the time it has gone through the whole process, gone through probate, have the property sold and refurbished, we're talking about, on average, a 6-year timeline. So potentially up to 25,000 homes could be locked out of the system at any one time. And these are homes in established communities where there's broadband, close to schools, where the infrastructure is already in place. And I think at the height of a housing crisis, it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever not to treat the rental income from a family home in these circumstances in the exact same way that is being treated in the Department of Social Protection. We have a perverse system laid out in this particular legislation where if such a home is actually rented out, you actually pay 3 times for it. So you pay the capital value of that asset at 7.5% for the first 3 years. On top of that, the rental income is considered a source of income, and 80% of that is calculated as means. And on top of that, if that rental income is lodged into the older person's bank account, that is considered capital on deposit and charged at 7.5% as well. So we're paying 3 times for a single asset if we actually rent out that particular property. Now, the Department of Social Protection have a system where they deal with capital assets and they either take the capital value of the asset or the income that's generated from that asset, but not both. In this circumstance here, we take both into account. So it acts as an artificial barrier to the renting out of these particular homes. Now, I listened intently to some of the comments that you've made, Minister, and look, I've spoken to you privately in relation to this and explained to you, I'm not looking for special treatment here. All I'm looking for is equity in relation to the system. And I know that the argument is being made by some within the Department of Health that an older person may be forced into a nursing home under such circumstances because the family may want to rent it out. First of all, there isn't a huge financial incentive for them to do that. Where the incentive is that it ensures that the house does not require substantial maintenance of a vacant property. There are quite a lot of families out there who would love to see their former family home providing housing accommodation, maybe to some of their own relatives or to some of their own neighbours. And I think it's a bit disingenuous to say that an older person could be forced into long-term nursing home care because, as you know, under the Fair Deal scheme, you're only deemed eligible to require long-term nursing home care if you comply with an independent medical assessment. So unless you're saying that the independent medical assessment is flawed, then that safety net is already there. A safety net, believe it or not, that is not there within the social welfare system, and this hasn't caused a problem up to now. So look, what I'm looking for is an equitable treatment of the renting out of these properties. I'm not looking for preferential treatment, but I'm looking that they would be treated the exact same way as would be the case in the Department of Social Protection, and in doing so, at least would not act as a barrier to the renting out of up to 25,000 family homes right across this country in established communities at a time that we're in the middle of a housing crisis. Now, Minister, I raised this issue directly on the floor of the House on the 5th of May with the Taoiseach. And in his response, the Taoiseach said to me that your department and the Housing Department are working together on developing the policy on the treatment of rental income and have agreed a process which is currently in train to move forward. So it seems to me that in principle the government have accepted the argument that I've been putting forward, have accepted the argument that this committee in the last all put forward at pre-legislative scrutiny stage, where they clearly stated that this anomaly needed to be addressed. But it seems to me that we're not going to do it now. We'll do it at some stage down the road. Now, it has taken approximately 3 years to get the government decision to bring forward this particular piece of legislation. It has taken another 3 years for the legislation to be published. If it's going to take 6 years for this particular anomaly to be addressed, we are going to have over 150,000 homes locked out of the housing market while we consider a solution to this problem. And Minister, that is not good enough. It is a moral at the time that we have a housing crisis. And I would plead with you, I would urge you that if you can't accept the amendments that I put forward, that you come back at report stage with a constructive amendment to deal equitably with this problem.
And just a further point to Deputy Naughten, because I don't accept there could be 150,000 homes. There's 21,000 people in the scheme at the moment. And when you tick the box in relation to whether you're single or married, they're the only two boxes that are available to you. But say, for example, you were widowed and you might have an adult dependent living with you, that actually isn't taken into account. But my understanding is, from the data we have, that we could be talking about 4,000 houses. Not everybody will want to rent them out, but still you could have a significant amount of houses that could house families and people going forward. So, you know, the housing issue is one that we're hugely conscious of, and we will continue to work forward. But I would be interested to hear what Deputy Shortall has to say in relation to her amendment. We are really, really anxious to have a report on this within 6 months.
Chair, if I could come back there. First of all, Minister, apologies, you're right, it's not 150,000 houses. That was a slip of the tongue. It's 50,000 houses, and that is based on the figures that are being provided to me by the HSE. There are approximately 14,000 people at any one time in long-term nursing home care where they have an asset. There's about 4,000 of those where they have a spouse who would normally be resident in that home. Some of those spouses may actually be in long-term nursing home care, and absolutely there may be other people residing in those homes. But the HSE did do a survey back in 2016 of these particular properties. I know it's like the third secret of Fatima to get the figures in relation to that survey. You have them, and you might publish them and furnish the committee with them, which I think would be helpful in relation to it. But based on the figures that are available to me, they're up to 4,000, they're up to 9,000 homes at any one time that fall under that category. That's 4,500 homes a year if you have a 2-year on average stay in the nursing home. So, all right, we're arguing between whether it's 50,000 homes or 25,000 homes. The reality is we're still talking about a large number of homes, particularly if it's going to take another 6 years to address this particular anomaly, like it has taken to deal with the current capital issue. Now, the reality is, Minister, these homes are in established communities. They're family homes in the main. They are beside the schools. The infrastructure is in place already. There is a clear government commitment in the programme for government to address the issue of vacant property. Here is the first litmus test for the government in relation to that. And what we're talking about here is a treble tax. I accept, Minister, this is a complex area. I don't dispute that. I know that you may need time to bring forward a detailed amendment on how you deal with it. But all I am asking for here is that you don't discriminate against people. Now, you're saying that it would be inequitable not to take the value and the income into account. Well, Minister, in the Department of Social Welfare, where payments are paid to people based on a means assessment, based on what they need to meet their day-to-day income needs, a social income support body. And it is saying that it is wrong to take the capital and the income into account, that only one should be taken into account. Not only are you doing that here, taking both into account, but you're also charging for the money being lodged into the bank account. So it's actually a treble tax that is being charged to people if they're renting out. So, yes, I accept this is a complex area. I accept that there is a need to bring forward detailed amendments in relation to it. But what I'm asking for here is in this legislation here, that you would clearly reflect what is the law in the Department of Social Protection in terms of the means assessment, have equity across the board, and not provide a false and unjust barrier to people renting out their homes. Final point I want to make, Minister, is I welcome the fact that you're bringing forward an amendment in relation to selling the family home. But, Minister, you're undermining your own argument about people being forced into nursing home care. Surely, if you had an option for an older person who is in long-term nursing home care, who won't return home, and they have an option to either sell or rent out their home. Many of those older people, I know that it's a psychological issue, but they don't want to give up their home. What you're doing now is putting an incentive in place to actually sell the family home and putting a disincentive in place to rent the family home. That in itself will cause duress for those older people to have an inequitable approach in terms of the forced sale versus the renting out of the family home. And I would really urge you to reconsider the means assessment between now and report stage, and then come back with your further amendment, but at least not put a barrier in place to the renting out of these properties. Thank you.
Deputy, if I could just come back there on a couple of points. So as long as I am Minister for Older People, the two key words are voice and choice, and their voice and the choice will be heard. That's the first point. The second point is we are working really hard to try and see how we can get the creative thinking in place in an extremely complex issue that it hasn't been dealt with by the previous government. And if I could say tongue-in-cheek, you have said to me the litmus test will be what I can do in relation to housing. This was also in the programme for government in the last Dáil when you were a senior minister yourself. So I have to say this is something
and the Cabinet records will show, and I was the one that at the pre-legislative scrutiny stage of this made these arguments, which was accepted by the committee and is now reflected in the legislations before us. So I've done my bit.
Yeah. No, but in fairness, I just want to say we all want the same thing. We all want to get people into empty houses, right? That's the most important thing. And what we have done is there was two asks for us from the department working with them. One was the sale of the house, that the cap would be included at 3 years. That's done. The second part is a lot more complex, and I take on board what Deputy Shortall has asked, that we would come forward within 12 months. We'll do it in a much shorter time frame, Deputy Shortall, and I'm happy to meet the committee again to discuss this, but it won't be in this particular piece of legislation because we just don't have the time. This is going to report stage on the 13th or 14th of July, and I will be bringing it to the Shannon after the Dáil goes into recess. It's so important that this bill goes through at the moment now, and that amendment in relation to the sale of the houses and the cap at 3 years will be included. And just one final point, the social protection means test and assessment under fair deal. Well, they have some similarities, but they serve different purposes. It's not desirable for the system to work in the exact same way. And like I'm just pointing out the specifics here. So you 37% of people who enter nursing homes and are only in a nursing home for 6 months. The problem we have is we don't have the data. We don't have the data in relation to how many houses are empty for 6 months or 12 months. We just don't have it. And that's part of the problem where it is so difficult to bring forward this, because as I've said already, 70% of people already have capacity issues. They have dementia in nursing homes. We want to give them a voice and a choice. Some people will never rent out their home. And I think, looking at what Deputy OD has brought forward in relation to including approved housing bodies and having a kind of a system in place where you're only renting out the house and you can have access to it if you did leave the nursing home, which I know is unusual, but we are trying to work through every single aspect we can.